We have a nice consortium here with different academic partners, including the Complutense University in Madrid, the Design School Kolding, HHL from Leipzig, and our university, the HMKW, University of Applied Sciences for Media, Communication and Management, located here in Berlin. And we are holding this workshop here today, which is myself, Henning, and my assistant Kirill Ivanov, who will guide you through further parts of the program here today. We have a couple of industrial partners that their logos you can see here below, and today we'll focus especially on a collaboration that we had with the Deutsche Telekom.
We asked you to bring an object which represents a game element you like or consider interesting to be used in a business context. And so please share a few words about yourself and present us this object. Please try to keep this short and use just 1 or 2 sentences to introduce the object and its meaning. And we'll also do a game which is known as name alliteration. And that consists of saying your name with an adjective in front. So I will start. For example, hello, I'm the keen Kirill, and I work as a research assistant at HMKW Berlin. And this is like an improvised chessboard that I brought, which reminds me that playful competitions offer a good way to learn how to think ahead about the consequences of your own and your opponent's strategic moves.
Doing this name alliteration, I'm the happy Henning today, professor for business psychology at HMKW, and actually I was never much into card games, but I have to admit I'm impressed how flexibly you can use different kinds of cards, for instance, to collaboratively estimate group efforts in planning poker. I don't have these planning poker cards now. What I stole here from my little one are some dinosaur card games. Okay, so thank you very much. Would be nice if you can all hold your game briefly into the camera so we can make a little screenshot here for the documentation. Everybody got her game? All right, great. Yeah, Eleonora, the airplane that's almost too big to hold.
Before I share with you what we learned about that from our industrial partners, I would like to ask you which potentials do you see for gamification to support and facilitate innovation and entrepreneurship? So anyone who wants to volunteer and say, what do you think is the biggest potential for gamification in this context of business innovation?
I could imagine that gamification helps. All games have kind of a chance element, an odd element, and this I could imagine that gamification helps to challenge in the mind and to playfully react to unexpected situations, and that might help in the business context. That kind of mindset, if you develop that mindset, that could be helpful, I could imagine.
Yes, I agree with Ronald. I think that gamification helps to think out of the box. When you play, you are more keen to think out of the box. And the other aspect in relation to entrepreneurship, games can help the team building process, since you start playing with roles, and this can then become something real when you especially build up a startup, for instance.
Kirill, let's see what our industrial partners gave us as a feedback, where they see the highest potential for gamification.
Yeah, so I think it's quite related to also what Professor Freitag and Alessandro said about this opportunity to see different developments and experiment and have this element of chance. So this is one aspect that our industrial partners underlined, and this is the experimentation in safe environment. Then also establishing a common ground of understanding, breaking down silos between departments, enhancing the collaboration between them, and also the collaboration between different functions in an organization. And also, as Alessandro said, this team building, so promoting personal relationships is also seen as a very promising potential of gamification in this context.
What we see in the literature is mainly more kind of anecdotal reports, a lot of like single case studies, reports, how some games work or do not work. What we do not see enough is figuring out the relations between them, some comparative evaluations between the different games, and appropriate methods and means to teach gamification based on such insights. And this is why we took this step that I'm introducing now to develop a collection or language, as some people would say metaphorically, of so-called design patterns. So, if you intend to teach gamification and games to the students, what's a good approach to do that? We see 3 different levels of maturity of doing that. First one is just asking the students, doing it yourself, using existing games for very simple predefined challenges, like this name alliteration game we did in the beginning of the workshop. Next step would be to adapt or customize an existing game for a more individual project. On the right-hand side, a game that I sometimes do with the students is you ask the students to draw a vase. So then they draw a vase on a post-it or on a short piece of paper. And then you ask the students to paint or to draw a way of people to enjoy flowers in a room. And then different images result. So just reframing the question helps to set the challenge and the task at hand into a different context, into a different perspective. And then discussing simple games like that and how you can repurpose them for different design tasks, for instance, can allow these students collect some more advanced experience with these games, and also discuss the limits of repurposing existing games. The third and most demanding level, I would say, is then to develop a new game from scratch that addresses a unique innovation challenge. And here, work with these design patterns comes into play, literally saying. What are these design patterns? Unless you're from architecture or software design, maybe you haven't heard of this kind of approach. It's an approach introduced in the 1970s by an architect named Christopher Alexander to the field of architecture. Alexander writes, each pattern describes a problem which occurs over and over again in our environment, and then describes the core of the solution to that problem in such a way that you can use the solution 1,000,000 times over without ever doing the same thing twice. Actually, this is already the overview of the different patterns that we found. And if you click again, I can guide you through these different levels. So we started from the top managements of innovation management, so the normative management level, strategic operational management level, and the typical challenges that can be supported there. So for instance, on the normative management level here on the right-hand side, we see adoption of facilitating the adoption of abstract organizational values among the employees. That's the level we will look into in a little bit. If you click again, then you can see, so this is the level of innovation and entrepreneurship challenges that can be addressed through gamification. On the next level, we have different gamified flow patterns, different flows of activities that can be used to address these challenges. And then on the bottom level, we have different component patterns, different game elements, so to say, that can be used to compose these flow patterns. For instance, a dilemma game, a dilemma solving flow, where you sensitize employees for potentially conflicting values, where you think through the consequences of certain decisions they are taking, and where you try to align individual and organizational values. Sounds a bit abstract now, so this is why we will take you through this exercise here in a little bit. We will look at the example of how we filled in this kind of canvas. together with the colleagues from Deutsche Telekom, how we define the challenge we're working on with them, how we define the players of the game, the purpose of and the intent of the game, and the basic methodology. And then we will bring you, and we will do 2 subgroups here to work on 2 different flow patterns. What we wanted to show you here is how you can use that template, so to say, in order to facilitate the development of new games, which actually is the most challenging tasks for professionals, but also for students to do, and how you can use the patterns and different interpretations of the patterns to come up with different options on how such a game and different game flows can be designed. I will just very briefly present what we came up with in our group. So we started with a dilemma game as a flow pattern, and then had a look into 4 different component patterns: the cards, the roles, collective decisions, and branching choices. So the game could consist in handing out different dilemmas. Yeah, imagine, for instance, you're the purchasing department, and you are paying above average wages to a production plant in an emerging economy, but you heard about some human rights violations. How do you deal with this situation? Yeah. Then handing out these dilemmas to the game players, you could assign different roles. We had the idea of giving a good cup, bad cup kind of role. One role representative arguing in favor of continuing the business, another one arguing for discontinuing that business because the human rights violations are just unacceptable. We had different other options how to distribute the roles according to the Walt Disney methods or the 6-head methods, creativity techniques that some of you may be familiar with.
4 ideas that we came up with, and they address the first 2 stages of the methodology, so raising awareness and then reflecting on the employee's personal impact in these 3 areas. So one idea is to have a card game to enhance knowledge and consideration, for example, of human rights, and to have different historical events on cards which are related to the development of human rights in human history. And the participants have to arrange them in the sequence in which they appeared historically.
We'll walk you briefly through the ideas we came up here for Deutsche Telekom and show you parts of that game that we developed here with this exact same challenge, stakeholders, purpose, and methodology in mind. First, you start with a quiz in order to convey some knowledge about corporate sustainability. In the second step, you deal with some of the dilemmas like we worked on in our first group here together. Then you identify some challenges to work on in order to continue with some ideation and a scenario exercise. Yeah, let's have a look at this one here. So sustainability cannot be an underground affair. You're working for the procurement department of this telecommunication company, and you're conducting regular audits with high-risk suppliers. During one of the visits in a developing country, you ask where this partner is disposing the hazardous waste from the factory, and he tells you that he buries it because even though he doesn't like it, the local authorities have requested him to do so because they're unable to collect the hazardous waste from the area. Any quick decisions on A, B, or C here?
This is funny, Henning. I mean, I think that the good answer is C. What will happen every day is A. And trust me, this is something I already see here in my region. Exactly.
Mario, imagine you are Robert, the shareholder now. What do you think of Alessandro's answer? Is that satisfactory to you as a shareholder?
Well, it depends if I'm mostly interested in short-term or long-term return on investment, of course. Short term, terminate. Long term, collaborate.
For this 2-hour format, we had a challenging agenda. However, we try to communicate some of the lessons learned from our GAMIFY project to give you some insight in at least one of the games we developed. We try to allow you a better understanding of what design patterns may mean for gamification. And we try to allow you to understand how gamification can be applied to address these cultural innovation challenges through the corporate sustainability innovation game.